welcome to my channel. Your support means a great deal to us and we'd love to know where you're joining us from. Are you at home or on the go? Feel free to share with us below. Now let's dive into today's story. Sarah Evans had spent her entire life taking care of her family. She was the only child in the Evans family, and the responsibility of maintaining the house, handling finances, and keeping the relationships within the family intact was all on her shoulders. Every weekend, Sarah would spend time visiting her family at their house in suburban Portland, Oregon, where she had grown up. She helped her mother, Maria, with chores like checking bills, organizing paperwork, and cleaning. For Sarah, these were regular tasks, but she didn't mind as it was her way of showing love for her family. One afternoon, just like every other, Sarah stepped into the two-story red house of her family. She sat down at the dining table to sort through a pile of papers, among which was a thick cream-colored envelope labeled Estate Plan and Will. She hesitated for a moment, staring at the envelope. Although she didn't want to open it, she felt an overwhelming urge to do so. After all, she had always been the one to worry about everything, the one who kept the family from falling apart. When Sarah opened the envelope, her heart tightened. Everything in the family, from the house worth over $450,000 to the new SUV and even her mother's wedding ring, was left to Emily, her younger sister. There wasn't a word, not a single mention of Sarah, no acknowledgement of her sacrifices over the years. A wave of anger overwhelmed Sarah. She felt like all the years of her sacrifices had been erased by a cold, printed sentence. Every memory of working 2 jobs to help pay for their mortgage, driving through snowstorms to deliver her mother's medication, fixing plumbing, and replacing shingles. Each of them seemed to vanish in that moment. She stood up, holding the will in her hand, and turned to face her mother. "Mom, what is this?" Sarah asked, her voice calm, eerily calm. Her mother, Maria, froze, her gaze quickly darting to the will. "Oh, honey, it's just how I thought everything should go," her mother hastily explained. Sarah stared at her mother, unable to believe what she had just heard. "I've done everything to keep this family intact and you leave everything to Emily? Why is there nothing for me?" At that moment, Sarah's father, John, walked in with a cup of coffee in hand. "You don't need to make a scene about this, Sarah," he said, trying to calm the situation. "Everything will be fine. Emily just needs time to stabilize." Sarah's anger was uncontrollable. "Stabilize? Don't you two realize that I've carried all the burdens? I've kept everything from falling apart." She looked at her parents with no trace of compassion. "Sure, Emily will be fine because everything's been handed to her. What about me, the one who's been worrying and sacrificing all this time?" She stormed out of the house without saying goodbye, and a sense of emptiness began to grow in her heart. Later, a message came from her father, asking her to transfer money for the house payment. Sarah felt like she had become a walking ATM, no longer treated as a person. Sarah decided to sever all ties with her family. She refused to send them any more money and decided she would never return. She began to live for herself, enrolling in a photography class and rediscovering dreams she had long put aside. However, after a few weeks, her parents started sending messages requesting money. First, it was her mother and then her sister Emily who relentlessly begged for help. Sarah refused them all. She felt exhausted from always being the one to do everything for the family without ever receiving any recognition or gratitude. A week later, Sarah received a message from a neighbor, Lorraine, saying that her family's house was facing foreclosure. At that moment, Sarah felt no joy, but neither did she feel regret. Everything had come to this inevitable conclusion, and it was her parents who had brought them to this point. Samantha, Sarah's sister, eventually came to her for help in saving the house. But instead of sympathizing and offering help, Sarah simply said, "This is the lesson you need to learn. You must face the consequences of your irresponsibility." She shut the door without looking back. In the end, after everything, Sarah learned that no one had the right to take advantage of her forever. She began living her life without worrying about her family, and her sacrifices were finally compensated with freedom and happiness. Sarah Evans had always been the only child in the family bearing all the responsibilities, from taking care of her parents to helping her sister. She always thought that sacrificing for her family was the only way to earn love and affection. But now, when she opened the will, everything suddenly felt insignificant. The house she had helped her parents renovate over the years, the money she had spent to save the house from financial loss, all of it was now left to Emily, the sister Sarah had always taken care of. From the moment she read the will, a feeling of injustice flooded Sarah. She thought about the nights she spent awake, the late-night calls from her mother asking for help, and the time she had to face the financial struggles of the family on her own. All of it, just to receive cold indifference from the very people she had devoted her life to. Sarah turned to face her mother Maria, who was rushing to prepare dinner. "Mom, what is this?" She held the will, her heart filled with rage. Maria glanced down at the document, her eyes shifting nervously. "Well, Sarah, it's just how I thought things should be for all of us." Sarah looked at her mother, feeling as if all her sacrifices had been discarded. "Just how you thought? Do you really think I don't deserve any recognition? All I've done for this family, and you leave everything to Emily?" Maria hurried over, trying to calm the situation. "Don't think too much about it, sweetheart. I just wanted things to be easier for Emily. You've always been so strong." "Strong?" Sarah laughed bitterly, a humorless chuckle. "Do you even see who I am? Do you see what I've done for this family? You think I'll just keep doing everything without a single thank you?" Without waiting for her mother to respond, Sarah stormed out of the room, feeling like she couldn't take it anymore. She left the house without looking back. The emptiness she felt grew deeper. Days passed in silence, with no messages or calls from her family. Everything continued in a quiet void, as if she no longer existed in their world. But then one day, Sarah received a message from Emily, the sister she had helped for so long. "Sarah, I'm sorry, but Mom and Dad are in trouble. They need help and I don't know what to do. I don't want us to drift apart." Emily had always been the one dependent on Sarah, and these apologies made Sarah feel like a part of her still couldn't let go. But then a small question arose in her mind. Does Emily truly understand her sacrifices? Or was she simply looking for another person to rescue her? Sarah looked at Emily's message but didn't respond immediately. She knew she needed time to think, to decide whether she could continue being the savior in a family that didn't truly appreciate her. She remembered how exhausted she had felt, always having to carry the burden. She remembered how she had sacrificed money for her parents, only to receive cold indifference in return. Eventually, Sarah replied, "Emily, I didn't help Mom and Dad to receive this. I did everything without expecting anything. And now I can't continue." The next day, when Sarah was sitting at her usual cafe, she received an unexpected call from her mother. She didn't want to answer, but something strange compelled her to pick up the phone. "Sarah, you have to help the family. Our house is about to be foreclosed. I don't know what to do anymore." Sarah listened, feeling only emptiness. This wasn't the first time they had reached out to her. But this time it felt different. She no longer felt the need to save them. The exhaustion and deep loss were too much for her to bear. She had realized she could no longer be the only one holding everything together. She decided to refuse. "Mom, I can't do this anymore. It's too late." The confrontation continued as Maria tried to find every excuse to convince Sarah to come back and help. But Sarah, who had spent so many years sacrificing for her family without receiving recognition, had made up her mind. She wouldn't go back. Sarah decided never to return. She began her new life, reconnecting with the dreams she had put aside while shouldering the responsibilities of being the only child in the family. She enrolled in a photography class and pursued things she had never done before. She also started learning to love herself without having to sacrifice constantly for others. She slowly realized that family wasn't always the place that provided comfort. Sometimes it could be the place that made you lose yourself. A month later, Sarah received a call from Emily. This time not asking for money but offering a real apology. "Sarah, I was wrong. I didn't realize I had made you carry too much responsibility. I don't know what to do now." That apology gave Sarah some peace in her heart, but she also knew that not everything could change with just one phone call. Emily would have to learn how to stand on her own and take responsibility for her life. Sarah Evans stared at a childhood photo of herself with her mother, her reflection in the mirror faint, as though she was trying to reclaim something lost. Time had changed her in many ways. She once believed that her sacrifices would be rewarded, that every late night spent fixing the roof or every drive through snowstorms to care for her mother would have value. But now, all that remained was a cold will and a feeling of emptiness that couldn't be filled. Although she had cut ties with her family, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. She still remembered the look in her mother's eyes when she first handed her the will. Her mother just wanted everything to be easier for Emily, but for Sarah that was unforgivable. She felt abandoned in the very home she had once loved. She had believed that sacrifice was a part of family love, but now she realized it was a trap she had set for herself. Sarah no longer wanted to think about saving her family. She was too tired. But deep down, something within her urged her to go back like a protective instinct, making it hard for her to completely cut off the people who had once been everything to her. She had to learn to let go of something she couldn't change. That was the biggest lesson Sarah learned from this experience. After rejecting her family's plea, Sarah lived a peaceful life in her small apartment. But life was never as simple as she had imagined. Occasionally, she received messages from her mother, but she didn't respond. The feelings of guilt and inner conflict always lingered. But Sarah understood that she needed time to truly live for herself. Then one day, as she was enjoying a cup of tea at a cafe near her home, a message from Emily popped up. "Sarah, I've received some bad news. Mom and Dad are really struggling this time. The house is about to be foreclosed and none of us can help." The words hit Sarah like a punch to the gut. Even though she had decided not to return, Emily's words still touched her heart. She sat still, staring at her phone, feeling a part of her still wanting to help. But what had happened before pulled her back to reality. She had to recognize that she was the one who had been hurt the most in this situation, and her family had never truly appreciated the sacrifices she had made. She couldn't let herself be exploited any longer. Sarah replied, "Emily, I'm really sorry to hear this, but I can't help. They created this situation and need to take responsibility for their choices. I can't keep carrying the burden for them." Although Sarah's decision was the right one, the pain still lingered. She felt like a part of herself was being torn apart when looking at Emily's messages, the calls from her mother. Those people were still her family, but they always placed her in the role of the provider without ever asking if she was okay. She began to rediscover herself. The photography classes she had signed up for not only helped her reconnect with forgotten passions but also allowed her to see the world through a different lens. The afternoons spent walking in the park, capturing small but meaningful moments, brought a strange joy. She realized that life wasn't just about pleasing others, but about finding joy and satisfaction in herself. Though the pressures from her family occasionally resurfaced, Sarah had learned to stand firm and not get caught up in unreasonable demands. She began to participate in photography exhibitions, and a few of her photos started gaining attention. For the first time, Sarah felt valued not just for her sacrifices, but for her own creativity and personal efforts. One afternoon, as Sarah was preparing for one of her photography exhibitions, her phone rang again. This time it was a call from Emily. Sarah looked at the screen, her heart stirred. She knew she couldn't avoid these calls forever. Emily needed her, but this time would be different. She couldn't continue playing the role of the savior. "Sarah, I'm sorry," Emily started, her voice trembling. "I can't do this alone. Mom and Dad are in danger and I don't know what to do anymore. I'm sorry for making you endure all this for so long." This time, Sarah didn't feel anger nor the frustration she had before. Instead, she felt a deep sense of resolve within herself. "You need to learn to take responsibility for your life, Emily. We can't keep letting things go without change." Emily was silent, but Sarah knew her response had made her sister think. "I understand," Emily whispered. "I will try to change. Thank you, Sarah." With this new decision, Sarah felt like she was opening a new chapter in her life. She was no longer the only one carrying everything. She found joy in doing what she loved and began fulfilling dreams she had long neglected. She continued with her photography classes, learned more about video editing, and participated in other creative activities she had missed. Every day she felt herself growing. Her steps became lighter and freer, and these changes in her life were the result of difficult decisions she had made. Her photos continued to gain attention, and Sarah could clearly feel the transformation in herself. She no longer lived for her family's expectations but for herself. No longer the one always stepping up to resolve issues, she had learned to say no and do what she wanted. One day, while Sarah was sitting at her usual cafe, she received a message from Lorraine, her old neighbor. Lorraine informed her that her parents had moved out, and Emily was now living on her own. That news brought Sarah a sense of relief, but it also made her realize that her life was no longer controlled by their demands. Sarah didn't go back to her family. She had severed ties with them and felt no regret. She had left behind those burdens to find herself, to live for herself, and not let anyone drag her into the endless cycle she had known for too long. Sarah's story wasn't about revenge but about liberation. She had learned that no one had the right to exploit her forever. She had found strength in loving herself, in saying no to unfair demands, and in rebuilding her life from scratch.